Hello and welcome to Sproutlogic Gardening. My name's Mike. I've decided I think today is going to be something a little bit different. I'm going to do something special as well. I'd like to take you through a tour of my entire garden to see my journey so far this season and to show you what's worked and what hasn't worked. So let's dive into it. Welcome to the most challenging part of my garden and our first stop, which is the south part of the garden. So over here, these trees cast a bunch of shade, the ground's very dry. Frankly, not a lot of things can grow over here well, except for hydrangeas that I put into pots. So if they were exposed to the normal part of my garden, any place else in fact, they would be burned to a crisp. This area works well because they get a little bit of morning sun, but then they're protected during the heat of the day, which is great. I also am able to plant things like geraniums and coral flowers. They both prefer shade, and I actually planted them in ground, and I mixed some soil and compost in there so they weren't just stuck with the clay, because simply put, the clay they probably wouldn't do very well in. I also have some ferns, and then some natural things. You see this Virginia creeper, which kind of is considered invasive, but for the most part, I leave it alone over here because it looks nice against the fence. But this is a very challenging part of the garden, but I always encourage you, if you have an area of shade, don't give up, don't surrender. Try to find things that'll thrive in there, and you'll be pleasantly surprised. You can actually fill this with all kinds of different things. These are just 3 examples of something I can grow over here. There's plenty more that can grow in shade. So let's move on. Now this part of my garden is actually east facing. You can consider anything over here to be east, behind you to the west. This has been a long running experiment I've had going for quite some time. So this is the wildflower bed. I actually bought some seeds that were specific to my area and region. I planted them a couple of years ago. But of course, the prep work before I did that was taking it down to the bare ground, kind of tilling it up a little bit, just a tiny bit, and then trying to keep the weeds and grass back, which, by the way, much easier said than done. So far what I've kind of found, I threw some bulbs in there like tulips and daffodils. The most dominant flower I see, cornflowers. This is by far the most dominant thing. Other than that, I see pretty much the things I plant for bulbs. Clover grows quite well over here. Normal grass, maybe a couple geraniums here and there, wild geraniums. But for the most part, not much else seems to grow pretty well over here. I also allow a honeysuckle in the back to kind of grow along the fence, which has been nice. But I tend to leave this area alone. Now, for those who have never grown a wildflower bed before, heads up, it gets through an ugly stage, and typically towards the end when you're hitting the end of your season, like August, September, it looks pretty rough. It's going to be a lot of brown, dead stuff for the most part, which is okay. You leave it to the very, very end and then mow it down to the ground. That helps the seeds disperse and helps it start over for the season. I'll be honest with you, I'm unsure I'm going to continue this experiment next year. I might do something a little bit differently. I want to make sure I have a really larger variety of flowers. I haven't been able to really accomplish that. So, also you'll see my peach tree is actually located right over here. Not much to really say about that. That's a couple years old. That's been doing pretty well on its own. Again, it's on the east side of the garden, getting plenty of sun, and hopefully we'll get a couple peaches on there. So I think we should continue this tour. Now, this isn't really far from where we were just at. In fact, right here is the peach tree, right here is the wildflower garden. This is actually on the east side as well, and I have 2 beds that are in ground. Important to note, the soil I have in here is literally raised bed soil. I'm not using the natural soil in here because we have clay. It's really heavy. A lot of things don't grow well here. But I could probably argue the things I have in this bed would do okay. Echinacea and yarrow are both grown in this bed. So these are bulletproof. I don't really turn these beds over at all, in fact. Both of these have not been turned over. I leave them alone because both the things that grow in there pretty much enjoy soil that's kind of just left alone, left to its own devices. So this bed, like I said, we got the yarrow and echinacea. This is a newcomer to the garden. It's grown in a pot, and this is a mop top butterfly bush. It's kind of a weird one. It actually only flowers in spring, so we're pretty much past that point already. It's right now it's April. I don't think it's going to flower. It's very young. I just got it, but next year it'll be flowering during spring. Otherwise, it'll just be evergreen, which is fine. And then, of course, you've seen this in my other videos. You've probably seen most of these in my other videos, but this is the lavender that I've had for years. Same kind of method in here. I completely leave this alone. I don't turn it over. These are just really hands-off. It's been fantastic, actually. They do their thing. They're perennial. They come back. Very little maintenance, and yeah, they just happily grow. Little surprise back here. I just put in a sea holly not too long ago. Very young. I won't probably see much from it until later on in the season, but I thought it'd be really good contrast with the lavender once it starts growing. But this is kind of my low maintenance, hands-off section of the garden. Works really well for me. I have my irrigation system run, which I forgot to mention. The peach tree receives that. The stuff in the dry garden does not. That's all hand watered. And the wildflower bed, of course, same thing. I actually don't even water that at all. I just let nature take care of it. So yeah, I'd say let's continue moving through the garden here. This is by far the worst part of my garden, I like to say. When I say worst, it's worst because it's the hardest challenge I've had and the toughest learning experience, I think. This bed is, I would argue, east facing. It's in the center of my yard. Behind you is my home, and it's west facing. So this receives a ton of sun. There is no irrigation set up in this bed. I hand water, and for a reason. These are hybrid tea roses. This is a spin top flower. When you water roses, you have to water near the base. A lot of irrigation systems, unless it's drip, will pretty much spray it. And even if it gets up a little bit on the canes or the bottom of the leaves, you're going to have problems. Well, that doesn't help me really here. These are, like I said, hybrid tea roses. And in my zone 7B/8A, they're just not a good fit. What I've discovered really is that no matter what I do, I spray neem oil once every 3-4 days to keep back the fungus issues. It doesn't matter. I've had to cut these both back this season probably like 3 times already. Dead canes, infected canes, leaves covered in black spot. It doesn't matter. Within a couple days, they end up having it come back. So the learnings for me is stick to what grows really good in your area. Don't try to push it. Nature always wins, and nature won here. I think this is the last season I'm going to have these in the ground here. I'm probably going to give them to someone else who's willing to put in the time. For me, listen, I enjoy gardening. I enjoy a challenge, but I mean, this is just not a great area for these to grow in, and they're just not working really well. They're beautiful, and they flower somewhat when they can, but still, it's not worth the challenge. It's not really fair to the plants, to be honest, as well. So I think I'll be taking these out by the end of the year, and we'll be putting something else in it. Other than that, though, the spin top flower does great. This is a full sun bed, so there's plenty of opportunity to plant here, but a tough learning overall. So yeah, I suppose let's move on to the next area. This has been another subject to plenty of videos on my channel. So this part of the garden is also east facing. So that's east again, west is behind me. There is irrigation set up in this bed. And this is what I like to call the snow bed, or basically everything that's in here is going to be white flowers. So, you know, I have my Pope John Paul II rose. I have a Bolero rose over here, Floribunda. And these are white flowers. And so I also have a couple lily bulbs in the ground that are going to be coming up, and I'll have a white dahlia here as well that hasn't been put in yet. It's a little too early. Well, roses, yeah. So this one I've been fighting with aphids and other issues. So I had to spray neem oil on this guy as well pretty much every other day. It's been a rough season, to be honest. Between the temperatures of summertime, you know, in the middle of winter, and then the cold that comes out of nowhere. I mean, we're going to be up into an 80, 90 today. It's going to drop down to 40 at night. It's absolutely insane. That has been a struggle because a lot of pests are coming out that typically aren't around. So I don't know how well this is going to do. You know, I actually had picked it out and purchased it with the intent that it was very disease and bug resistant. And what I'm finding is it doesn't really matter. Nature doesn't care. It's getting beat up pretty bad. So doing my best to save it. This guy's doing a little bit better, arguably, but overall, I might need to think about switching these two as well and go into a different type of rose. We'll see what happens, of course. But yeah, this bed is, you know, pretty good. It's been running itself outside of that, really. I mean, the major issues I've been having are due to probably seasonality and things I'm trying to grow. But overall, I think it's a good spot, plenty of sun. And I'm kind of excited to see what the results are of these two roses, if they actually do pull through maybe this early season pressure, or if I'm going to be dealing with the same stuff as the other ones. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to the north side of my garden now. Very different story to tell over here. This is by far the most successful part of my garden, without a shadow of a doubt. This is north facing. However, there's a gap between my neighbor's house and my house, which means that we get sun pretty much over here, probably 8 hours plus during spring, much longer in the summer. But overall, things do really well over here. So I have things like petunias, phlox, lupin, you know, anything that likes full sun and is pretty bulletproof will do really well over here. You know, with the no dig method, I've kind of left the soil alone other than planting things in there. They're very happy. I have irrigation ran throughout all of these beds and these pots, by the way. This is actually a butterfly bush. This one actually will flower in the summertime. It's a little bit different from the other one. What you don't see is the raspberry that I planted in the one video is over there as well. Plenty of sun, has the water resource hooked up directly to it, which for my irrigation, I run basically 3 times a week for about 15 minutes. I do a little bit of supplemental watering by hand, you know, just to make sure things are okay, but that seems to do quite well and the beds are okay. But this is an example of the right flowers or plants in the right place. Everything's happy. There's no problems. It doesn't matter about pests because it seems like, you know, what I've picked here is pretty much resistant. There's not much that's going to take them on. And so overall, they're just extremely happy and healthy. You know, this is the part that I worry less about. I kind of come over here just to enjoy a lot more. There's a lot less fighting things back and trying to deal with pest or problems. A little bit of deadheading. That's not true. A lot of deadheading with the flowers, of course. But overall, this is the part I enjoy the most. And probably the best learning experience for me is, again, like I said, right plants in the right place. They just take care of themselves for the most part. You're there to observe, do a little watering, take care of them, take care of the beds, and you're good to go. So yeah, let's go ahead and wrap this video up and talk about kind of the final thoughts and findings for everything overall. Now, the one part of the garden I didn't show you was actually up against my back porch. So I have two things there. I have a clematis, which is growing up onto it, and then that yellow jasmine I showed you a while ago. Clematis is a newcomer, by the way. The idea is that they'll both grow kind of halfway across and meet in the middle. So on one side I have the clematis and the other I have the yellow jasmine. Now they flower at different times, of course. The yellow jasmine is springtime, that's it. Clematis will be pretty much late spring all the way until fall, but still nice contrast. So now that you've seen my garden, you've kind of seen my journey, you've seen the struggles I've had, I encourage you to take a step back as well. Look at your garden. Take a look at areas maybe that can be improved on, areas where you may want to add something new or think about doing something completely different, like a shaded spot or a more troublesome corner of the garden. Remember, as long as you work with nature, it's not a fight, it's not a battle. Things will happen naturally. The north side of my garden is a perfect example of that happening, right? There's not a lot of struggle there. I don't have to worry about it. Compared to picking plants that, they really aren't a great fit for my area, or putting them in spots that aren't great for them. That's another thing to keep an eye out for, right? Especially the advantage of having things in pots like you see, and I have a lot of things in pots or in beds, is that the potted things I can move around rapidly. In bed, different story, I gotta dig them out, move them around, but still there's that ability to move stuff around if needed to make sure the plant's really happy. Let me know down in the comments if you have any questions, thoughts, concerns. Maybe if you have any advice on those roses, I'd greatly appreciate it because I'm losing the fight and losing the will to continue that fight. I hope this video was helpful. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next video. Take it easy.